Welcome to Buddha at the Gas Pump. My name is Rick Archer, and my guest this week is Kenny Johnson. Welcome, Kenny.
Hello, how you doing, Rick?
Great. Here's a little bio from Kenny's website. We'll be hearing this story in detail, but Kenny spent over 20 years in prison and has been out of prison since 1997. He is a spiritual teacher and consultant to families and to those who have been out of prison and may be going to jail. He also just finished his book, The Last Hustle, chronicling his years as a criminal and how he was transformed while incarcerated. Kenny has one passion, and that is sharing the message that God's grace is here now. Kenny's spiritual awareness and other spiritual teachers' insights have been published in the book The Awakening West by John Lumiere Wins and Lynn Marie Lumiere. Here's a quote from Kenny. "If there's anything worth serving, it's this love. If there's anything worth being, it's this love. If there's anything worth talking about, it's this love. If there's anything of real value, it's this love." So that's a beautiful quote.
Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember, but we've actually met 3 times over the years. The first time was a long time ago. You must not have been out of prison very long. You came to Fairfield, Iowa, and you spoke, and I came to your talk. And I remember at one point when you first mentioned Gangaji in your talk, you doubled over with emotion, and that really impressed me. And then later on, I asked some stupid in-my-head kind of question, and and you gave me a very down-to-earth answer that kind of brought me right out of my head, into my heart, and that impressed me. And then the second time we met was like a few years later out in San Ramon at Amachi's ashram, and in the dining hall, and I said, "Hey, Kenny, how you doing? What are you doing these days?" You said, "I'm driving a limousine." And I said, "Oh, are you a spiritual teacher?" He said, "No, I'm driving a limousine," and that impressed me. And then the third time we met was last year at the Science and Non-Duality Conference. You didn't do anything to impress me then, but we talked about arranging this interview, and here we are. So I'm glad we were able to do it.
You got a good memory. I remember you. I was telling my partner Pilar that that we had met before, but I forgot about the Fairfield, Iowa time.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. Must have been the late 90s or something.
Yeah, I just got out of prison then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just got out of prison, 1997. Yeah. And then San Ramon, I vaguely remember that, because you said limousine. I said, yes, I was driving limousine, and I was happily driving limousine.
Sure. Not a bad job.
And speaking of the Science and Non-Duality Conference, that has been a great conference for me and the work that I'm doing. I'm glad that they're doing it.
Are you going again this year?
I'm going again this year.
Good.
Yes.
So I'll see you there. And last year we met just right after Gangaji's talk, and she'll be there again this year. So
yes,
it's a nice little kind of family reunion kind of thing.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes.
So I'm sure you've told your story 1,000 times,
Yes, I have.
and hopefully you're not getting too tired of telling it. But many of my listeners may not have heard it. So, I would like to invite you to tell it again in as much detail as you want. We have all the time in the world, as much detail as you feel is relevant and interesting to people. Let's go into it. Maybe I'll throw in a question every now and then.
Okay. It's always good to start at the end and go back to the beginning.
Okay.
I'm living in California now, and living in California, I'm working with people incarcerated. And I had no idea that all my years of being in and out of prison would prepare me for the work of working with the people incarcerated, mainly and specifically women, Rick. And so I work in the San Francisco County Jail with the women once a week, bringing, I would say, dignity to those incarcerated, to those women, because their dignity has been taken from them, ripped from them, stripped from them. And I try my best to go there, sit down, and just be a kind, loving man. Just listening, with no agenda, no direction, no purpose. And you say, well, what credentials, what qualifies you to do this? Do you know what therapies and it was all those years of being in the streets and having to watch out for the next person, be able to read an individual correctly and say, this person is a friend, this person is a foe. And so when I started out as a young hustler in Kansas City, Missouri, at the age of 14 years of old, 14 years of age. I was stealing. I was mainly a thief, a sneak thief, sneaking into offices and buildings and taking people's money out of their safes and out of the cash drawers. And my mother, bless her heart, tried her best to get me to go the right way by taking me to church, getting me involved in community activities, or even she even had a community fireman take me in as a young man and try to give me skills
Mm-hmm.
to contracting skills so that I wouldn't be stealing. And all of that, none of that really stuck because it was I was bound and determined, and it's my destiny to be a criminal. As I look back on it,
Hmm.
it was my destiny to be a criminal and to steal and to bring a lot of pain and suffering to people's lives. Because as a thief, you steal a car, somebody come out, the car is gone. You break into the house, they feel violated. You cash checks, the banks have to make up for it. You rob a bank, you're traumatizing people. You put women on the streets as a pimp, as a hustler, they're wounded most likely for years and years and years to come because the things you asked them to do for you in the name of the dollar bill.
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of things that I did that I'm not proud of, but it was my destiny to be in prison in order to experience this moment with you.
Hmm.
I had to go to jail in order to have this conversation with you.
Yeah. I
It was
understand.
just,
Yeah.
because you was, Rick Archer was destined to do a number of things in order to sit here in front of this camera to have a conversation with me.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like, Rick says, well, I don't want to be a college educated gentleman. I don't want to be married. I don't want to have kids, dogs, whatever. But you had to go through all that in order for us to arrive here today to have this conversation about the divinity that is present at all times, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah. I believe that. I mean, I don't. My life was a lot easier than yours, but
Yeah.
there was some rough stuff, alcoholism and things
Yeah.
like that in the family, and I even
Hmm.
went to jail a couple times myself, but it was just for
Right.
just for a night or two, a little marijuana, nothing big, but all that stuff.
Well, okay, Rick? I'm gonna ask you. You the interviewer, but I'm gonna the interview you. Go interview the interviewer.
Okay.
How did it feel to go to jail just at one time? At one time. How did it feel?
It was a little scary, The first time
Yeah.
it was in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and I had long hair, which was a little new in those days, back in the '60s. And there
Right.
were a lot of these big, tough, no offense intended, big, tough black guys who
Hmm.
didn't like me,
Right.
and they were kind of like muttering and yelling things at me and all.
Right.
I was a 17-year-old kid, so it was a little scary. But
That's right.
but it was an interesting experience. I remember this one old guy. He had, I guess, been a wino, and he kind of hiccuped and burped constantly. And
Right.
he was real friendly to me. And he came in my cell, and we sat there and had this conversation. And I don't know. It was just it was an experience, and I'm sure it was very insignificant compared to all the stuff you went through, but it gave me a taste of that.
They gave you a taste, so you know how it feels to be handcuffed.
Yeah, I was
You know
handcuffed.
how it feels to be photographed,
Yep.
fingerprinted.
Yep.
You know how it feels to have your liberty. You cannot call, you cannot move, can't do anything.
Yeah. In fact, I have dreams. I don't know about recently, but decades
Right.
later, I still had dreams about it.
That's right, because that is very traumatic for any human being to be taken away and kidnapped
Hmm.
in the name of whatever you want to call it, and placed in a cell and not being able to move or go anywhere or contact your loved ones or whatever else for a number of hours. That's trauma.
Yeah.
And that I experienced that 20 years worth.
Yeah. Really. I can't even imagine.
Yes. Well, that's magnifying yours 20 years. Then imagine. Magnifying them big guys 20 years. Hey, Rick, come here, man.
Yeah. I understand the whole thing got started because you had been working in some summer job doing construction and stuff, and very sincerely working very hard and all, and then the guy ripped you off, you know, and it totally disillusioned you.
Yeah, what happened is what really was the tipping point. I was already a thief by, I was just a thief. I was a criminal somewhat by nature. Just I wasn't afraid to steal, and so, but my mother wanted to do the right thing. My stepfather wanted me to do the right thing, and I wanted to do the right thing because I had been in juvenile hall for a year, and I didn't like that. The boys' home for a year, and I didn't really like that. And so I said, okay, Mom, I'm gonna go along with this plan of yours. So I moved in with Conrad, and I took care of his. I babysitted his children. I learned how to paint. I learned how to put windows in. I learned how to wash windows. I learned how to paint, put floors in, carpeting in, everything a construction worker would do. And at the end of the summer, the deal was that I would work for him all summer. He would save all my money and pay me at the end of the summer. So I have school clothing. I went along with the plan. Come August, it's time to get school clothing and get the money. And I said, Conrad, can I get paid? He says, yes, you can. Let's sit down at my desk. And he got his calculator out. He got the counting and multiplying, dividing, and subtracting. And when he got through, he gave me a $32 check. And he just go ahead.
Paid you about 50 cents a day or something.
Yeah, he justified that saying, well, you stayed in my house, you ate my food, you did blah blah blah. I said, but you know, as a young man, I said that wasn't the deal. I didn't know about all that part, you know.
Right.
In his head, that was the deal, but in mine, it wasn't the deal. It was like, oh, I work, I get so much money. And so after I took the check home to my mother, and my mother didn't back my play, you know, so I said, you know what? I'm going to do it my way now. And I called my little hoodlum friends, my hustling buddies. They gave me, it taught me how to hustle and put some money in my pocket. Once an individual, a human being, knows they can walk out the house, I don't know, get a gun, get a knife, or get a pencil or paper, whatever, and make money, they're cool. I knew I could walk out the house with a screwdriver or my wits and make some money to feed myself. Once I knew how to do that, I'm cool. In other words, I wasn't going to starve.
Right.
And that's the main. That's what life is all about. How can you not starve? And as
Basically.
I mean, you know, like right now, like Rick got to put some money on the table, or he gonna be skin and bones.
Right.
There won't be a Rick. There won't be a boot at the gas pump. There'll be a skeleton at the gas pump.
Right. Is your mother still alive, by the way?
My mother's still alive.
Oh, that's great. You know, because I was thinking as I was listening to your recordings, I was thinking, I hope his mother's still alive because she can see, you know, she can be so proud now about how things have turned out.
She doesn't know anything about Gangaji. I showed her a couple of videos about Gangaji. She doesn't really care about Gangaji's message. She doesn't care anything. All she knows that whoever this woman is, she performed a miracle because her son is out and living a productive life.
That's great.
So that is really, 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 to her, a blessing and a godsend.
Yeah, really. She must be very happy, proud.
Yeah,
Good. So let's continue the story. So you're a young guy. You're starting to do all this illegal stuff.
Yes.
And then what?
Start going to jail.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I started doing all this legal stuff, and it started getting good because every time you would, you know, make a hustle and get a few $100, $1,000, whatever in your pocket, you say, wow, and that just boosts your ego and boosts you up and give you more confidence. Whereas you actually are digging a deeper hole. So the more every time I went out and hustled, made some money, I was digging a deeper hole into the world of hustling. The world, there was almost like there was no turning back. And so over the months and weeks of 1965 and 66, I was hustling, and I got busted for stealing some jewelry in 1966 in Kansas City, Kansas. And that was my first
arrest
for a felony.
Right.
To land me into prison for 5 years, and that's what happened. I got arrested for stealing $10,000 worth of jewelry. I was 17 years of age. They waited till I turned 18 to sentence me. I went to jury trial, and of course, they convicted me. And then I went to sentencing, when I was 18 years of age in October 1966, and I spent 2.5 years in state prison in Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was in prison, I started reading. This was the beginning of my education. I started. It was that was it's 1966. It was a revolutionary period. You know, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. Revolution was strong. Angela Davis, Huey Newton. I mean, everybody was. The Black Panthers, Patty Hearst. All of that was just like was in the news every day.
Right.
I'm following this and I'm reading these books, these revolutionary books, and I'm reading Time Magazine, Newsweek, and Life Magazine about all these different people. And then I started reading about Malcolm X. I started reading his autobiography and how he said how he educated himself in prison was to read the dictionary. I got me a dictionary, started reading that dictionary.
Huh.
Oh, and as an aside note, every Monday I go into the Women's County Jail here in San Francisco, and I passed out 56 copies of my book, and now they keep asking for what? A dictionary.
Interesting. They got to do it too.
I do it too,
Yeah.
and so now I'm taking 2 dictionaries in tomorrow. Matter of fact, I bought me a couple. So I'm taking dictionaries in almost every week. I'm gonna start doing that so they can have plenty of dictionaries in the jail.
Yeah. Hey, just before I forget, if maybe would you like some? If people have like dictionaries in their house and they're not using them, they're just sitting on the shelf. Would you like them to send them to you to increase your collection? You could give them to the ladies.
They can, what right now, man. I'm glad you mentioned this. Right now, just tell them to send is. I hope I'm not opening up a floodgate of stuff. But yes, send to my PO box because I can take them in to the women, and they will read them. I work with 56 women, so
Yeah.
56 any anything would be a benefit because they will read them, and what they can't read, it'll be in a library. It'll
Yeah.
make the circuit all through the jail. It'll be in a jail forever.
So not just dictionaries, but other kind of spiritual books or interesting books or things like that.
Yeah, so I gave my copy of the books to 56 women, and they're quoting. You said this. You said this.
Uh-huh.
And what you do, Rick? Like I go into, I'm gonna give you a story. Last Monday I went in, and it was my fourth day working with these women. I went in, I introduced them to meditation like Gangaji does. I go, you sit in meditation for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and I know they can't really handle a lot of meditation, so I sit about 1 or 2 minutes. So this last Monday I went, I sat down, I closed my eyes, and they knew to close their eyes, and man, wow, we just deepened.
Mm.
And Rick, I mean, as a TM, no, soon as we closed our eyes, we were there.
Yes. When we settle right in.
I said, "Whoa!" I said, "Wait a minute, no, this can't be happening, not this quick." So I said, I peeped. I said, "Okay." I went back in. I said, "Oh my God!" I said, "I can be here all day long." And I sat there about another 2 or 3 minutes. And I came out. I said, "I wonder if you all had the same experience that I had. That this 3 or 4 minute meditation was like all day long." He said, "Yeah."
Mm.
We are deepening. We are deepening just by coming together and just talking. I mean, I'm not saying let the story go. I'm not saying be in the moment. I'm not saying there's only one love. I'm not saying let's just hang out here and have a conversation and just have a few minutes of meditation. And we're deepening by just coming together in the spirit of love.
That's great. Very nice. So I'll put your address on my website so that people can send any books that they're. In fact, I'll send some. I'm often kind of giving away books that I don't have room for on the shelf and stuff. So I'll send you some.
And I can take them right in, so it's not a big deal at all.
Yeah, yeah. And there's no rule about them having to be new books or anything. You can bring in a used book.
Yeah, because I got caught to do whatever I want to do with that group.
Good. Okay, great.
So I could stack of books in, I give them to Yolanda, and she says, E-Pod or whatever, and there it is.
Yeah. Okay. I have another friend who's in the penitentiary up in South Dakota, and there's some rule it has to be new books, or maybe I guess it can be paperbacks. Anyway, we're getting off the track. But
I did time at Sioux Falls, South Dakota Penitentiary.
pardon?
I did time at Sioux Falls State
Oh,
Penitentiary.
that's where my friend is. Yeah, his name is J. Rue Hall, and he's up there for some kind of bank fraud or something like that. But he's a very spiritual guy too. But sent him a bunch of books. Anyway, so you're a young guy. You're 17. You start reading in prison. You're reading the dictionary. Let's get back on the story.
Okay. And I started reading, Malcolm, Franz Fanon, Eldridge Cleaver, Richard Wright. I mean, all types of. I'm just reading all types of books. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I meet this young black man who's a saxophone player, and I just love the way I said he's my age and he's making this saxophone do all types of miraculous things. I said, can you teach me? So he took me and this other young guy, and he taught us how to play trumpet and saxophone. So I started learning how to play saxophone. So I'm reading and saxophone in the band. I must say at that time, prison was for a young man, it was a place of growth.
Yeah, really. You had all this time to do all this constructive stuff.
Constructive stuff, a lot of constructive stuff. And at the same time, I was still stealing in jail, and that almost got me killed.
Oh, yeah. Stealing from other inmates.
Yeah, because they don't play that stuff like, man, how come you stole from me? No, they don't play that. Right. They start running a knife in you,
Yeah.
I cut that one out quick.
Yeah.
And so for the next 2.5 years in prison, I did a lot of reading, a lot of studying. And when I got out of prison, I was out 6 months, and I was right back in.
Just got back into your old habits.
Got right back into my old habits. And
did you try for a while to not get into the old habits, or you just get right back to it?
No, at that time I was in full bloom. I was young.
Yeah.
Had plenty of energy, no fear of prison because I survived prison. So there was no fear of prison. So I said, oh, I'm gone. So I went back out hustling, thinking that I could beat the system. I was automatically just in it. I said, I can beat the system. So I went out and got back to hustling, got popped, went right back to jail. No big deal. I mean,
did you ever hurt anybody with a knife or a gun or anything like that? Or
what happens is after in prison, after over the years, it gets to the point where you're gonna have to hurt somebody. You're just gonna have to do it. And what happened was I got involved with my homeboys, and they got jealous because I had a good job, I was making money, and I was doing this, I was doing that. And one guy, he just decided he just want to take it upon himself to hit me in the mouth.
Uh-huh.
And so when he did that, I had to retaliate, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to retaliate, and if you don't retaliate in prison, it gets worse.
Yeah.
I couldn't allow that. So I waited 2 weeks till everything calmed down. Everybody forgot all about him hitting me in the mouth. And I, went and did what I had to do, And I went into his cell and I tried to bust his head up with a pipe.
Wow.
I mean, that's what I had to do, I didn't have any guilt about it. I didn't have any shame about it. I didn't have any remorse about it. Like, okay, this is the world that I'm in. This is what I got to do in order to survive and to protect my manhood. No problem.
If I ever had to retaliate, I'd be in bad shape because I'm a scrawny little guy.
Yeah, the scrawny guys are the most dangerous.
Huh. Yeah.
Because there's no, and then plus once you realize you're on your own. There's nobody to back your pay but you. So, well, I gotta make a decision here, And once you're able to do it once, then you get the confidence. You build upon that. Then people realize, oh, don't mess with him because
he's crazy. He's just gonna get you. Yeah.
You're gonna retaliate.
Right.
So don't mess with him because they don't want to mess with, nobody's gonna retaliate, and I will retaliate silently because I read Machiavelli's book.
Machiavelli. Yeah.
Right. And he's always, he was like the master of war, of supplies, of being in control, of the enemy, and I knew I had to be able to go in, do my dirt, and get away. So I did what I had to do. Went in, got away, didn't get caught. They investigated me because they heard about that me and him had an altercation, but they couldn't prove anything because the time frame had been so long.
Mm.
Well, he could have got into trouble with somebody else.
So did
So
you
they,
actually whack the guy with the pipe?
yeah.
Was he okay or pretty?
No, no, he wasn't really okay. His head was all busted open like that, and they had to
Uh,
do surgery on his you know he almost lost the eye and everything.
wow. Hmm. Well, I hope they don't watch this interview and go come after you now.
Dead, you know.
Pardon? What'd you
He's
say?
dead. He's dead.
Oh, he's dead now.
You got him.
So okay, you're in again after 6 months. You're out in the streets doing your old thing again and back in jail. How long were you in the second time?
42 months.
That's pretty long. Yeah.
42 months.
Yeah.
And I got out when I was 24, 25.
Mhm.
Got hustling, right back to hustling.
Boy, never a second thought, huh? You never thought, geez, maybe I should try something different this time.
No.
Huh.
No, I mean, I had it. Now, as a spiritual, as a college trained physics student, when something is in motion, tend to stay in motion.
Mm.
So something stronger counteracts.
Yeah, so there's just deep-seated habits, and
Now those habits are running.
that's the way you're wired.
I'm wired, and there's nothing to tell me. As I look back on it, there's not. That's why I like working with the people, women in prison, because I know how they're wired.
Yeah.
And if we can just short with the wiring, we get opportunity to have a different conversation.
Yep.
So I want to be able to short circuit the wiring like Gangaji did for me. So automatically, our trajectory, hustling.
And then the second time you're back in prison, were you back to the reading and the trumpet playing and all the constructive stuff again?
Yeah. I was a model prisoner.
Yeah. Interesting.
I would go back, I would get my saxophone, I would read my book. Now, the second time I started reading sociology, communism, Democrats and Republicans and
Political stuff.
political stuff, So I was into that, and philosophy, Aristotle, I was into that,
Mm.
Marxism, Leninism, I was into that phase.
Mm-hmm. And so you did your 42 months, or did you get paroled early?
I did my whole 42 months, got out,
Back to hustling.
This time I stayed out. I was out 2 years or something like that before I got caught up because I became very sophisticated. And I was cashing checks. I was pimping. So that when you become a check casher and a pimp, you taking yourself out of the limelight of the game.
Mm.
You front street.
Yeah, it's more subtle. You're not so easily caught.
So your stay on the streets is a little longer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm out there, so now the game is getting good to me because I'm getting successful. I'm driving cars, and people hearing about me. My name is ringing in the streets. Then I get popped.
Mm-hmm.
I got a lot of cases now with checks and all kind of stuff. Even a robbery case that I didn't do. So I said, man, I can't do all. I started counting the amount of time I could get. I freaked out. I escaped. So I saw the bars and I escaped and got away. And I stayed out an extra 3.5 years.
You sawed the bars?
Yeah, I escaped out of jail. My
Wow.
woman hacksaw blades, and I was in Liberty County Jail in Liberty, Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
I sawed the bars. I mean,
Amazing.
yeah, and I sawed the bars, and the plan that I was saying, I got to get out. I got this because the draw, the pull to get back to the streets was so strong.
Mm.
I haven't done enough yet. I haven't hustled hard enough yet. I haven't pimped long enough yet. I got to get back to those streets.
Amazing.
And so I escaped and got back out and went right. But this time, I went to Minnesota and I started hanging out with some pimps, real pimps. They said, listen, Slim, you can't hustle no more. Like, you can't do a rough hustle. You can't rob. You got to pimp, man. And so that's when I really learned how to use my mind and my mouth to make money.
Hmm. And in case somebody doesn't know who's listening to this, a pimp is basically somebody who kind of is a front man for prostitutes, right? I mean, you just organize a bunch of prostitutes and you're their businessman, so to speak, right?
Yeah, I always say that the Pope is a pimp. Obama, he's pimping real good right about now. Romney's a pimp. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I mean, that's having people do something for you.
Yeah, yeah.
Just but on the street level, is just a basic. Put the women on the block.
Right.
But if you, whenever somebody asks somebody to go out and do something for them, you're pimping them.
Okay, so it's not even necessarily prostitution. You might be having somebody rob things for you or whatever.
That's pimping. You know.
I see. Okay.
I'll have somebody else go do something. You're
Right.
not of something.
You're a little bit removed from it.
from it.
Yeah.
Drug dealers are pimping other drug dealers. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
They're pimping.
I see.
Talking to, macking people into doing something.
Yeah. Were you doing much drugs during all this?
Yeah, alcohol, drugs. Yeah, mainly alcohol and cocaine.
Uh-huh. But you weren't heavy into that. It wasn't like you were a drug addict. You're mainly a pimp and a thief and stuff.
That was part of the lifestyle.
Right.
So, okay, the woman's out working. You make some money. So now, well, you go to the after hours club. You sit down. You snort cocaine.
Right.
And talk to other pimps and other hoes about the game. You're pimping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're playing now.
Okay. So you're out there like 3.5 years this time after having escaped, right?
Uh-huh.
And then you got caught again, obviously.
Yes.
Up in Minnesota.
I got caught in Des Moines, Iowa. Went back to Missouri. I had charges there in Missouri. I did about 9 months in Missouri. Mm-hmm. I got transferred to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Mm-hmm. I did the rest of my time in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I got back on the streets 2 years later after escaping. I was back at it.
You escaped from Sioux Falls?
No, I got out of jail from Sioux Falls. I got parole.
I see.
Missouri to Sioux Falls. Oops, and I got back to and got parole from Sioux Falls to the streets.
I see.
I back to hustle.
Yeah, boy, yeah. You're not you took you a while to learn things, doesn't it, Kenny?
I was hard-headed, man.
You're what?
Hard-headed.
Hard-headed, yeah. So that's what I was gonna say, something like that.
I believed in my heart and soul that I could get away with it. I still had this belief that I could beat the system.
Yeah.
I still believe that. No, I mean, again, there was nothing strong enough to stop me. Jail couldn't stop me. The threat of the death penalty couldn't stop me. Life imprisonment couldn't stop me. So I needed something that was really strong to stop me in my tracks.
Yeah, and it's a good thing we didn't have that 3 strikes you're out law around here in those days,
Jesus.
And so, a couple more years, pimping again, whatnot, you're back in again. Mm-hmm. This is like a repeating pattern.
Yeah. So I go right back in. Now I get out. I get parole back into the streets. Now this is where it gets interesting.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I get back on the streets, and I get back with my buddies. And at this time, there was a drug was on the street called freebasing.
Oh yeah, cocaine, certain kind of cocaine, right?
Yeah, well, you take the cocaine in a powder form, and you shake it up and make it into a rock, and you smoke it.
Right, I've heard of that.
That was so. I got hooked on that drug.
Mm.
That drug made me want to make money to keep doing the drug. So I was hustling. I was making thousands and thousands of dollars a day cashing checks because I wanted to buy the cocaine. Mm. That's good. So I was hustling for 2 years straight doing the cocaine. And, oh, man, that was probably the worst part of my life for as drugs was concerned.
Yeah.
It took me down to a place where it just dehumanized me as a human being. I had no morals. I would do anything, no scruples. I would do anything to get the drug, make the money, get the drug. And that's when I got busted for the feds in Denver, Colorado for bad checks.
Writing bad checks. Uh-huh.
And then they took me back to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where I got sentenced to 40 years for writing bad checks.
It's right up the road from where I am, Cedar Rapids.
That's right. Right. I got sentenced to 40 years there, and that was the beginning of the turnaround.
Yeah. And then you went to serve out in Colorado, right?
I served time everywhere then for the feds. I was in federal prison. I did time in Lewisburg Federal Prison. I did time in Talladega, Alabama. I did time in El Reno. I did time in Terre Haute, Indiana. I did time in Leavenworth. I did time in Colorado.
Why do they move people around like that?
Well, they call it. They don't want you to be able to
Build up a system or a network or something?
network.
Yeah, okay.
So they keep moving you around, so you can't never really build up a game.
Yeah, I see.
As soon as they find out you have built one up, you're gone.
Yeah. Okay, and so you say this was the beginning of the end of this pattern for you.
Yes, yes.
Why? Why was that?
Because then I started, when you go to federal prison, you're automatically thrown into a different mindset.
Hmm.
I'm in a mindset of billionaires, millionaires, people that's making money all kind of ways, and you're rubbing shoulders with them every day,
Huh.
guys made $20 million cashing checks,
Wow.
guy, $10 million selling drugs. Like, wow, whoa, and they're sophisticated and they're suave, I'm saying, wow, man, woo, just you just in a different mindset, and they read different material, and so I started playing tennis, and I started bumping into cats who had taken boats to India or to Thailand or Vietnam, and filled it up with heroin or cocaine and brought it back.
Hmm.
So while they were there, they learned how to meditate and all that kind of stuff, And they come back, then they get busted. So here they are in the penitentiary with me playing tennis, talking about, here, man, read this meditation book. I discovered this guru in Vietnam, Saigon, some kind of way. And so this is how I was able to get into the Eastern religion, was through these drug dealers, these smugglers.
Interesting. So they're like smuggling millions of dollars in heroin, and yet they're kind of spiritual guys interested in meditation and stuff.
Because they go to India, hang out there for no, because they're smuggling, and they go hang out somewhere for a while, and they learn all this different stuff while they're there. Go to Turkey, and they come
Mm.
back, well, Islam, so like
Sufis and whatnot. Yeah.
Sufism, stuff like that. So they bring them back to prison. Isn't
Yeah. Interesting.
that amazing, man?
Yeah, it is.
How consciousness, this is good now, how consciousness can be a drug smuggler and bring consciousness back to the penitentiary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Through
It's
it, because it's all consciousness, it's all one. But it's amazing how it gets its truth to itself in a weird way.
yeah. I mean, it's not like I could have gone in there and introduced meditation or something. It's got to come in a way that it can
That,
come in.
right. And so it was this one cat. He says, "Man, my woman, man, she gonna bring some hatha yoga books in from this guru, Muktananda.
Hmm.
So play up business in the magazine, and then we started being part of this newsletter program. This is about 86, 87, because he played tennis also. And so I started doing hatha yoga. I started standing on my head. I made me a pyramid and put it up in my bed so the vortex would come up through me and me out. Oh man, all kind of weird stuff, man. Stuff like that. But so it's amazing, man, how it happened.
Yeah.
Even Muslim brothers used to say to me all the time, brother, once you go hang out with your little white friends that's laying in the grass and get some of them them bugs all over you. Because, Muslims just stand up, right, they have a little bow tie, and they don't lay in grass, they don't sit around. And my meditators, we be sitting there in the grass and just meditating on the head. So they used to make fun of me because I hung out with the long-haired drug smugglers. But it was through those cats that the seed of freedom was planted.
Mm.
They just planted the seed by reading this book, read Yogananda. And I'm reading Yogananda, reading all these different books, and how, Yogananda was went into suspended animation for 27 days before he died, and it came out his body wasn't touched, like, wow,
Yeah.
and
After he died, his body didn't decompose after he died.
didn't decompose, like, wow, whoa. How they could read people's minds and they could walk through walls. I said, I want that.
Yeah, especially walking through walls. That's a good one.
And so it was through the drug smugglers, able to start reading a book that was about waking up,
Mm-hmm.
meditation and yoga. And I got fascinated as opposed to Christianity and Islam. I was fascinated by it because of the cities.
Right.
Because what inmate in prison doesn't want power?
Yeah. Learn how to fly. Just fly out of there or whatever.
I ain't out there. You go all that.
Mm-hmm.
Manifesting things in your hand and all. Sai Baba, you know.
Yeah. Interesting. So did you begin like to meditate kind of regularly then?
Meditation was regular until one day I was meditating and I was in meditation about 20, 30 minutes, and I had the most awesome, terrifying experience that if I meditated any longer, I was going to die.
Hmm.
I mean, die.
You just felt like you were going to die.
But as you know now, that was the death of the ego.
Right. Yeah.
Like where the ego was ready to be slain.
Mm-hmm.
But I could not slay it. I didn't have the wherewithal to slay it.
Yeah. And you didn't know what was going on. You didn't have a teacher to say, oh, okay, this is a good thing.
Teacher, I didn't have a guru. So I
Right.
started reading, and Yogananda, Mutananda said, you must have a guru to
Mm-hmm.
wake up. So I started praying open. I started praying for a guru.
Right.
I had a dream that a guru would come to me, but I have to get out of prison and go back to prison in order to find this guru.
Hmm. In the dream, you knew that.
Yeah, it was like omen,
Hmm.
prophetic dream,
Uh-huh.
like a big dream.
And is that what happened? Yeah. So you got out. You were paroled, I presume. You didn't do your 40 years and
Got out, and 13 months later, I was back in prison
hustling again.
again.
Yeah.
I got back to prison, and I got transferred to Springfield, Missouri. I met Fleet Mall down there, and Fleet Mall, he says, when you get to Colorado prison, and look up the Buddhist guys from Trump and Rinpoche organization, and they go into prison, they meditate with them. Went up there, and I got back into meditation. You know, again, the tennis players, drug smugglers. Here we are again. You know, doesn't you know? I got hooked up with them again, and that's when I met Gangaji.
Hmm. Yeah. Tell us about that story when you first met Gangaji.
Well, I met her 2 times.
Okay.
I met her 3 times. I met her in video.
Hmm.
Didn't understand what the hell she was talking about. Like, what is she talking about? Go to what's coming now? What is that stuff? You know, we just like walk away like, what the heck they talking about? You know, but yet there was attraction there. You know.
Hmm.
And then finally, because she had a group of people that would come in and work with us, you know, show us videos. So the Buddhists would come in and work with us for the teachings are concerned. The Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana, and Tantra, and the Gangaji organization would come in and they say, at her teachings.
Right.
So April 1994, she came in and with a group of us, and that was my first time seeing her, and I made a beautiful gift to gift her. I gave her the gift. It was like a little incense burner for her.
Hmm.
I gave her the gift. She took it, and in that meeting, my friend John Sherman, fellow prisoner convict,
Oh yeah, I've interviewed him.
and I said, "Wow, man!" But I saw him the next day, and he was totally, totally, totally transformed.
Mm.
And when I talked to him, I said, "Man, what's wrong with you, man? You're different, man." And he says, "I'm in love." I said, "Who?" He says, "I'm in love with her." Who her? Her. I said, her. That's what he called Gangaji. He just called her her.
Mm.
Gangaji. I said, "You can't love her. She's married." Duh. Love, you know. I mean, you know. So surely enough, he had an awakening experience, to whereas all he saw was and it was in the form of Gangaji.
Hmm.
Uh, I knew then that I want whatever he had. I start writing her, and I would get letters from her, and her just enough Shakti pot in it to stay in my mind. I mean, I would read the letter like, oh my mind would stop
Mm.
because just what she said, you are the essence of it all. Like koans,
Mm-hmm.
my stop, and this went on for the whole summer. September 1994, she came in again. It was in the same meeting, another meeting, brother, in same chapel, rather, same group of convicts. And I was sitting right next to her, to her left. And after we came out of meditation, she looked over at me and says, Kenny, I've been thinking about you. And I blurted out the question, Gangaji, Gangaji, Gangaji. I said, it's my understanding that we have to die before we can receive God's grace. She says, Kenny, God's grace is here now. I said, oh, she says, you think that you're a black man, you think that you're a convict, you think that you father of the daughter, you're none of these things. And as she was saying that, I was just going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into who knows what. And I just totally let go, and the rest of the meeting was a blank.
Mm.
I came out of the chapel, looked at a visitor that came in with her. I looked into her eyes, and I recognized consciousness. And even today, you'll see us spiritual people.
Yeah.
I and so, but then I was like, whoa! I was like, are you like this always? I don't know what that meant. Like, are you like this always? I had no idea what it meant, but she understood. She said, yes. I said, oh my God. I had recognized something different, and I had recognized eternity. I said, oh, wow. Then I turned. I looked up at the stars, and I saw beauty in nature, the twinkling stars. Ah, look, aren't they beautiful? We both looked up, and as I said in my book, The Last Hustle, fell into the sky. And it was such a beautiful moment. There
Mm.
was a nature even recognized the beauty in nature that I had never recognized before, along with the beauty in another human being. And that was that. After that, Rick, um, I never wanted to rob and steal again. I never want to put women on the streets. Those thoughts and those urges come up, of course, but I just don't have psychological energy or the wherewithal to go and to commit those type of crimes now.
Great. So
Great.
you mean you got paroled again, obviously, and then when you got out, you just didn't have the energy to do it.
The only energy I had was to keep letting go of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all the energy I have after being out of prison since 1994, or having the awakening since 1994, is to share this with those people who may never ever get to go to India, Bali, Thailand, or to Fairfield or Satsang.
Mm-hmm.
So my life and work is to share this message. God's grace is here now with those who will never make that trek.
Yeah. So you're saying that even now you occasionally have thoughts or impulses about hustling and that kind of thing, but you just dismiss them or ignore them?
Of course,
Yeah, they still come up.
of course.
Huh.
This system, this body
Yeah.
was trained, was conditioned to survive point of a gun, writing bad checks or putting a woman on the streets. So when survivor comes up, the urge of, I'm going to die, I'm going to starve. Put a woman on the street. Well, man, I'm too old. I can't pimp nobody. Who going to listen to me? Nobody. You could rob a bank. Wait a minute, man. Banks are too sophisticated these days to rob. Okay, can't do that. Well, you could do this. Man, listen, all those things, keep on going. Pretty soon, well, you could get a job. Okay, then. Well, you could do this here. Oh, okay, you could. Okay, cool. I, it's like a computer is scanning, scanning for options. And finally says, well, I take that option there, whereas I can go get in my car and go down to the hamburger joint or whatever, or social detox center and get a job.
Yeah.
And so I don't have a problem working, or as you said, driving limousine.
Or whatever. Yeah.
I don't have a problem doing that anymore. Before I had a problem doing it because I realized getting a job, driving limousine is still some form of hustle to feed myself, to take care of myself. It doesn't have to be at the a gun. 'Cause all I want to take care of is belly. Put a roof over my head. It doesn't take much for that. And then after I take care of those basic necessities, then I want to share this wisdom with others who can do the same thing. So you know what? I don't have to prostitute myself. I don't have to sell crack. I can just go out here and get me a job and be happy with the uh, basic, basic.
Yeah. It seems that so these days are you doing some regular job in addition to going and visiting the prison and all that?
I worked about an hour ago at a detox center in San Rafael in Marin County, whereas I go in, I work a graveyard shift, and I work with those people who try and detox off all type of drugs and alcohol.
Great. That's a great job. I mean, since you've been through that yourself, you can.
And I had no idea that alcoholism was the worst drug there is.
Hmm.
No idea. I had no idea that my clients coming in that have been under detoxing off alcohol, if we don't monitor them, they will die of a seizure.
Yeah.
No idea they would come in and the guy says, I want my medication. You give him his medication. Because, I mean, I had no idea alcohol was that deadly.
Mm.
Heroin, cocaine, that you can detox off that real quickly. Methamphetamine, you can detox, but the alcohol is something. It's amazing what alcohol does. That should be for some people. It shouldn't be. It was totally, totally, totally bad. It should be. It should be sold by a prescription.
Yeah.
Because I released a guy this morning from the detox. Had $8 in his pocket. He came in. The police dropped him off. He slept it off. I said, man, I said, you 50-some years old. What are you gonna do? I said, well, I'm gonna go make me some money. I'm gonna try to get my life together. And you knew he was going straight, make some money, go get a bottle, and go unconscious. And he says, who? He didn't know who arrested him. He didn't know where he got arrested. He didn't know nothing. I said, all of it was just wiped out. That memory of it was just wiped out. And he lived like that every day.
Mm.
I said, how can you live like that every day? It's amazing to see that. It really is. When are you going to stop? How can they stop?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I mean, you yourself did the same
I did.
dumb thing over and over again, even though you kept getting arrested for it. And we've all done things habitually that we're kind of blind to what we're doing. We just keep doing it until some light kind of peeps through the crack, and we kind of realize how stupid it is what we're doing, and we find a better way. But I guess the question is, how can you reach such a person?
I mean, when they come at them, I, I mean, it's just like, like, don't even waste your breath on this person.
Hmm.
Don't even say you are loved. So all you can do is just be kind to him. That's all you can do. Just be kind to him. He said to me, after I dropped him out of the van, he got out, he looked over at me as if he didn't want to leave me.
Hmm.
So like he kind of recognized something. And I know he recognized something. I said, well, okay, man, take care. And he says, all right, man. It's just, you could see that he recognized something, but
Yeah, he felt something. Yeah.
and I know what he felt because he didn't want to leave.
Hmm.
He hang out. But I'm on a mission. I got to go get some, I got to do this. And I said, wow. I could see that he didn't want to be away from me.
Yeah, there's something to that. I mean, you know, you were kind of beaming some love in his direction, which perhaps had been a very rare experience for him, you know.
When he got out the van, he didn't really want to get out the van. I said, man, get up out of here, man. You can't stay in this van, man. You got to go, buddy.
Mm.
He walked around. He says, bye. I said, it was touching. I said, later, man. He said, well, I'm going to go here Safeway, give me a donut. Know what that means.
Right. Yeah.
I give me a pack of cigarettes. Well, maybe I like the cigarettes. Let me go get some wine. Then I think about the cigarettes. So, you see he's about ready to kick in.
Mm.
Just for a moment, we recognized each other. Just for a moment. So, as we're having this conversation, you're bringing my awareness to the point fact that all I have to do at the detox center, even though I cannot get to them, is just be myself and stay present. And maybe I might make a connection that I don't know that might be that need to be made, and I don't know how it's going to be made, but just stay present. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right, and I think you're planting seeds also, and who knows when those seeds are going to sprout. You know, maybe 5 years later, some influence you had now is going to finally sprout, and the guy's going to say, well, maybe there's a better way for me or something.
That's why I go to the women's jail and I sit down and talk to them. That's be present. It's so funny, man. I go to the jail, I do my little meditation, then I get up and I walk, and I just sit down in the midst of them, and we just sit there kicking it. We just sit there having a conversation. Like I talk somewhere, we just sit there and talk for the next hour. I mean, and we ain't really talking about anything specifically. We just talking about whatever comes up. And it's amazing how we're deepening just having a conversation. That's why I like what Carl Rogers says. He says, when you're with your clients, just go there and just be present, be empty. And just be vulnerable to share what's coming up with you.
Mm-hmm.
And just in that space, which is totally antithetical or goes contrary to most therapeutic practices. Because the therapist is usually, what's going on is over there, and you're over there, and I'm over here, and that we can't cross this divide. Paul Rogers saying just sit there and be human, and you'll be amazed what comes up. And we know when Gangaji, Adi Shanti, or any other guru, yourself and myself and Pilar, whenever we sit down and be present to our friends that's being present, something happens.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have an agenda happen, just being yourself makes it happen.
Yeah, in fact, some gurus they say that the main way that they're having any kind of influence is just their presence. Like Ramana Maharshi, it wasn't so much the words he said, it was just sitting in his presence and kind of getting tuned into that deeper presence.
Right. And that's why I saw last Monday when I was with the women, I said, like you're tuning, hitting the tuning fork. Bing! Now, all these other tuning forks, we're tuning each other. We're tuning ourselves to each other. So when I come in tomorrow, they know the whole body, the nervous system is saying, now we got to be in harmony or in tune or in sync with this.
Yeah, exactly.
And
the tuning forks kind of get each other going more,
Right. Right. So I'm excited about the work that I'm doing. I've been doing prison work since 2005, but I'm so excited in 2012, going to 2013 with the prison work because I'm on to something now.
Yeah.
I'm on to something that I don't have to contort myself, and to do.
Do you kind of see the possibility of your prison work becoming a full-time gig?
That's what we're in the process. What Pilar and I are in the process of doing now. We're writing a brochure, and we're going back to our website and revisiting our website and redesigning it to focus on bringing dignity to women incarcerated. That's why it's right now. And so because we're seeing now if we hone in and become very specific and focused, then people can support that because I want to, right now I'm going in on Mondays. I want to go in on Tuesdays. I want to go in on Wednesdays. And Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I can go in and have smaller groups, like 4 or 5 little pods throughout the day. And then I can have individual groups where I go down, go in, and just sit and listen to the stories.
Hmm.
Some people say, I need a job, I need this. But I just was, okay, I understand that, but let's just sit here and talk for the next 30 minutes and just see, just to give them somebody to talk to. And I want to have other therapists or other uh, 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 spiritual people to go in with me.
Right, right.
And then then I want to segue right about having a office space or a sacred space outside of the prison wall wherever I'm at. Where they come out of prison, they know they go across the street or go down the street, go around the corner, walk to this sacred space. Because I want to have it close to that area. Like bail bondsmen have their offices close to the jail. I want to have spiritual bail bondsman Kenny Johnson this sacred space close to the jail.
Yeah, like a spiritual halfway house kind of thing.
Would he come in and sit down and just do rituals, do meditation, and maybe get some direction, maybe get a little few dollars to put in the pocket to go, whatever, you know. But that's where I really want. I've been having this vision for years, but this is the first time I feel really, really, really excited because I'm more focused now.
Yeah.
Before I was working with men, I worked with women, I was in county jail, I was in team, and quitting. I was all over the place, a shotgun, and the people that were working with me, they were really working for me for the sake of their own whatever. But now it's like it's me and Pilar, and we're focused.
Pilar is like your partner or something?
Pilar is my everything.
Your
It's,
girlfriend, your partner, whatever?
she's my heart, she's my mind, she's my soul, she's my woman, she's my um, very own self.
Nice. I think I've heard her name, but I don't really know who she is. Maybe I'll meet her at the SAND conference.
Sad conference, Pilar Cortez.
Okay, great. Um,
She's
well,
very,
you think about it, with all the billions of dollars that are spent on the prison system in this country, huge amounts of money, there should be something in the budget for somebody like you trying to do what you're doing.
right, right. And this is how it happens. It's through people such as you, the SAD conference. I do a talk somewhere, and people like what I'm saying. Contact this cat and see what he's doing. How can I help him? Write a check for 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, whatever. And so that's how I've been able to keep doing this work.
That's great.
Through the largest awakened people that get where I'm coming from.
Yeah. And there's a donation button on your site, by the way, which I'll be linking to your site, and if people want to donate to your efforts, they can click on that and help you out.
Thank you so much, Rick.
Sure. You know what I find fascinating in a way, it's a little bit more of a philosophical consideration, is just how blinding Maya can be. You know what I mean? It's like we get, like you were talking about those alcoholics. Essentially we're all this pure awareness, pure truth, pure consciousness. We're God, in a human body. But isn't it kind of fascinating how lost we can become?
That's Maya, like you said. Maya.
It is. It's amazing, and it's a puzzlement in a way. I mean, I've certainly been there and still am to a certain extent. But boy, I mean, the depth to which one can become blinded and lost.
God, you get so lost. I mean, but and that's true. You can get so lost and forget who you are, forget. But, but the beauty, consciousness never gets lost. And so it Rick be running. I'm lost. I don't forgot who I am. Who am I? Where am I? I don't forget all that mess. I don't want to hear that stuff. I got a problem here. But then consciousness was it. Hey, Rick, remember me.
Yeah.
It's far away. You say, oh. You might see a Buddha you might be riding in an old raggedy car with a guy who's your mechanic, and you're riding down the highway. You say, "Why am I with this cat who got this raggedy car making noise and my mechanic?" Then all of a sudden you look over in the driver's seat, said, "Sitting on your apple." He said, "Oh, this, and he pulls out a Buddha. I said, what are you doing with a Buddha? He says, my auntie gave me this Buddha before she died, and this Buddha been with me ever since. And I said, and there was like consciousness saying to me, I'm right here, even in this situation here. It blew me and Pilar away.
That's neat.
Rick, this cat had no connection to nothing, man. No guru, no huru, no lulu, no boo, nothing. Had a Buddha. He says, my auntie gave it to me before I died. He said, this is the most precious thing to me. I said, oh my Lord. You know those little red fat Buddhas?
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
Little thing on the back?
I think I have one on a shelf up here or something. Well, I have one variation up on the shelf.
I was asking myself one time, I sometimes I be with somebody. I said, why am I with these people? Why am I in this situation? Why am I doing this? Then all of a sudden, you see a book or you see a picture and it says, oh, I went to Michael Meade a retreat with some men. I said, why am I going to this men retreat? I said yes to something. I don't know why. I get there, and I'm in Pasadena, California, and we go all up these hills, the Salvation Army Retreat Center, and I get there, and I put my bags down, and I'm walking around, I'm saying, why am I here? I should be back in Colorado, Boulder, Colorado, doing whatever. So I walk into the hall, and I look around up on the wall, and there was a picture of Ramana Maharshi. I said, that's why I'm here. Ramana wants me here. So it's just amazing to me that Maya can take wherever she takes you, but she's taking consciousness.
She repeat that last couple words that you cut out.
Maya can take you anywhere. Maya does take you anywhere and everywhere, but really Maya is the friend of consciousness because she's taking you to consciousness.
Yeah.
I got so lost in illusion thinking the pimp, the hustler, to where it took me to the penitentiary, and that's where I found consciousness.
Yeah. And that whole life you lived molded you into the kind of person who can bring consciousness to a certain kind of person, with and you have the authority and the experience and the background to relate to those people, which others wouldn't have, and so it's given you a kind of a qualification or a value that is priceless.
Right.
Yeah. So. What do you do to renew yourself? Do you have a meditation practice? What do you do to kind of recharge your own batteries?
Oh, going a prison, the prison work.
So the prison work. So you don't sit down and meditate or anything like that, but just doing the prison work kind of recharges you.
I don't have I do meditation, but it's not my I do it, but it's not my formal. I my practice now is going into prison
Mm-hmm.
Monday, and just that connection lasts me or keeps me focused on love. I mean, I understand. I understand. Now, you can meditate every day, you can levitate every way, but you, all of those things. But that's why they have something called savor or charity or zakat. Because when you're giving of yourself back to yourself, that is the greatest practice.
Yeah, no, very much, very true. And you mentioned several different words there. Many cultures have recognized this, and and it kind of you you're not giving to get, but you do get more than you receive when you give, right?
Always get more than you could ever give. You go in and say, okay, well, I'm going here, I'm going to get it, women, a piece of my mind. And next thing you know, they end up giving you a piece of your mind back to you
Yeah.
tenfold. Oh my God. This is why I came in here today. I didn't even see that part of myself. So that's why I understand zakat. Why the Muslims stress zakat. It's one of the five pillars of faith is giving back zakat. You
Mm.
know, everyone is always saying charity and giving savor. And I find whoever. Okay, now I'm going to step on some toes now. So you ready?
Doesn't bother me.
I ain't, I have an issue with these gurus that's running around, these popcorn get gurus running around here, talking about they are that and we are that, and you are that, and that's that. 'Cause they are not really giving back. I don't see the charitable programs. I don't see helping the homeless. I don't see feeding the foster child. I don't see them, having so much money going to the AIDS. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no. You know Amma, of course. You've gone to see Amma, and I heard a story recently where one of the most famous gurus in India said he wanted to meet with her, and she said, "Do some seva first."
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. I had to finally realize and say to myself, thank you. I kept saying, why is it I'm not traveling around the world, having hundreds of people bow to me and kiss my feet and all that. I realized, no, but your job, Kenny, is to go and talk to your own. Just like Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, they went back and got the slaves out of slavery. They knew the way, they knew the suffering. The same thing for you is go back and get your one, get your twos, and God will reward you for that far more than having hundreds of people kissing your feet and fanning you with peacock feathers or whatever it was. So I got an issue with these popcorn gurus. These chitty pimp gurus around here talking about yeah, just be in the moment, let God love you. I mean, I got a problem with that, man. I got an issue with that because they should be supporting programs or people such as myself who are really doing it in the trenches. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Gangaji is a nice exception to that, right? I mean, she has done her time going into the prisons, and maybe she still does. I don't know. But if not for her, where would you be today?
Gangaji, that's why I love Gangaji because she says, I want a prison project. I mean, she could have had any kind. She could have had a build a women's home, Habitat for Humanity project, save the whale project. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
She said, I want to go to prison. And in the prison, she came and got a few of us prisoners. Now, I've written a book about my meeting with her, my life, and how it was transformed, and it's touching thousands of people's lives. And now I'm going back, and it's like, oh, this is what you're supposed to be doing. Taking this message back to those who really would never, ever hear it.
Yep. And from what you said, it sounds to me like there must be a lot of really receptive people in there. It's like when they get off the streets and they're in the prison, then their mind begins to think about deeper things.
And well, because they're no longer distracted.
Right, right.
And they're not doing drugs, they're not doing cigarettes, they're not doing anything. So it's like, why am I in here?
Yeah.
What did I do this time?
What's it all about, really?
How can I not go back? Well, you need to read the Bible. Oh, Jesus. Then you get jailhouse religion. That's the first thing you get jailhouse religion. I ain't gonna do it no more. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry, Dad. I ain't gonna do it no more. Jailhouse religion. That lasts about 5 minutes. Soon you hit the brick, the Bible's gone, and the jailhouse gone, and the religion is gone. Back to the street. But my understanding and my message and my focus now is real simple. You can have all these behavior modification programs. You can have all these restorative justice programs. I'm not. Those are all beautiful. They're really quite beautiful. You can have yoga. You can have all that. But I'm finding just loving kindness, basic loving kindness is all they want to know because they haven't been loved.
Right.
I'm just now running out of to appreciate love and to allow the love in. My nervous system is just now saying, well, I think I can relax 15 minutes to be hugged on. because you've been so traumatized all those years in prison.
Yeah, you probably heard that story about I forget it's a Hawaiian thing. I can't pronounce it. Hawano Pono something or other about the guy in the criminally insane mental hospital out in Hawaii, right? And he just sat in his office and flipped through the files of the various patients and just loved them. I love you and I forgive you, you know? And one by one they cleared out of the place.
And because there, there's no separation between, there's no separation in consciousness. That's no, I mean, I can sit right here and say, Rick, you are love. And you will feel that love thousands of miles away.
Yeah.
The same thing applies when you walk into a jail, you sit there and it says, and it's beam love. It's beam love. It's beam love. And they feel that love. Say, oh my God, this is the first time I've seen love in the manifestation of a human being or another human or man. And with women, it's in the form of a man. They haven't seen love in a man. They've seen a lot of lust
Right.
and anger and rage, but they haven't seen love in a man. So it's that's love.
Probably gonna have all these women falling in love with you.
Man. They
Pardon?
be, I love them. They love me, and you should see it.
Yeah.
I, wow, look at her. Whoa, look at that. Because in- Of, of openness.
One thing I see as a possible kind of limitation is not everybody. I mean, potentially we're all love, you know, in an ocean of it. But a lot of people just don't have they're kind of all closed down, you know, and it's not easy for them to love. And so, you know, somebody like yourself who's been through a lot, who's been with Gangaji and everything, you know, you're at a point where your love can just flow. But not every person could go in and do what you're doing and sit there and feel that kind of love, you know.
Okay, now Rick, I beg to differ.
Okay, please, yeah.
When you're living in the moment, mm, there's no separation.
Can anybody live in the moment? Like 20 years ago when you were Mr. Hustle, you know, Mr. Pimp, could you have lived in the moment the way you can now?
No.
So there was some kind of development that had to take place.
Meet somebody to show me how, to show me the moment.
Yeah, to wake you up to that.
Once I saw the moment through my teacher's eyes, oh, then I started seeing it in other people's eyes.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying is we need this to be contagious. We need it to spread so that more and more people can live in the moment like that, and then radiate the love to others, and then we can change everything.
That's right. That's right. I'm doing what I in as very humble, as the most humble way I possibly can, the most gracious way. You know, is just go in and sit and just be available,
Hmm.
genuine, so they can see a genuine love and experience. And it just starts fanning this love that's always there starts, the flame starts being fanned
Yeah,
and fanned. Pretty soon it becomes a blazing, 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 blazing inferno that consumes all that is not that.
beautiful. And 5 years from now, you know, maybe some of those women that you're meeting with now will be doing what you're doing.
Doing what I'm doing. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
cool.
yes.
Alrighty. Well, this has been a fulfilling talk. Is there anything that you feel like we haven't covered that you'd like to say to people?
No, no, just go to my website, this sacred space.
Hmm.
Support our work that we're doing. You know, however you feel supported. Um, I'm open to working individually through groups, come doing side songs. Um, just support the work that I'm doing with the women here in San Francisco. Everything I do out here to raise funds is to go to support the program and to expand my program now.
Mm. Yeah. So obviously, anybody who's has any connection with the prison system or any kind of thing like that could get in touch with you and see what comes of it.
Right, right. And if they got connection to the bank account, that also helps.
In other words, if they can support it financially. Yeah. Are you established as a nonprofit organization or anything like that?
We EIN number.
Like a 501c3 or something?
Yes, 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 yes. I had to get all that straight, so now we can take not donation and become not tax deductible.
Right, yeah. I'm working on accomplishing that too.
I can send
Um,
you information to take you. I just email me. I send you a form.
okay. Um, so, great. So, let me just kind of wrap things up here. I've been talking with Kenny Johnson, who lives out on the West Coast. You've heard his story, so I don't need to reiterate that. His website, which I'll be linking to from batgap.com, is thissacredspace.org. And on there, there's a donate button. There's an explanation of everything he does. There's a place where you can invite him to come and speak and so on. There's also his physical address, which is Box 3 in Fairfax, California. And we mentioned earlier in the interview that if you have books that you'd like to donate that he could bring into the prison, you can send those out to him. And you probably have some kind of, I don't know, I don't see a newsletter people can sign up for, but they can stay in touch with you, I'm sure, if they want to. Oh, there is a subscribe thing. Yeah.
Yeah, subscribe, and also, yeah, right, and also people just drop him an email. Just drop him.
Yeah. Yep. Your contact stuff is on there.
My phone number's on there. Give me a call.
Great. Kenny will be speaking at the Science and Non-Duality Conference, as we mentioned. So if you happen to be going to that, you'll see him there. And I'll be conducting a forum myself there with a couple of very interesting speakers. So you'll see that in the schedule. So in conclusion, then. I've been, if you'd like to listen to more of these interviews, I do a new one every week. Subscribe to the YouTube channel so YouTube will notify you, or go to batgap.com and sign up for the email notification there. There's also a discussion group that develops around each interview that becomes quite lively, and you're free to participate in that. There is also a podcast. If I just spoke to a guy the other day. He called me from Rishikesh, India, and he said that he's been hiking up in Nepal and the Himalayas and listening to Buddha at the gas pump while he hikes in the Himalayas. So there's people all over the world doing things like that. So you can listen to the audio podcast, get it on your iPod if you want. So all kinds of possibilities, and it continues to grow. So. As does Kenny's beautiful mission. So thank you very much for everything you're doing, Kenny, and for this interview, and for the love that you're sharing with people. It's very beautiful, and you're really giving back.
Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you're a relatively young man. I'm sure in the course of your life, many people are going to benefit from what you're doing.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah. We'll empty out those prisons. All right, so thank you everybody for listening or watching, and we'll see you next week. Next week is going to be Stuart Perrin, who is a disciple of a fellow named Rudy, who died in a plane crash way back in the 70s, but a very interesting story. I'm reading his book just now. And I think the following week we're going to have Anita Murjani, who had a near-death experience. He was nearly died from cancer, and then had this profound experience, and kind of came back and went into complete remission from the cancer. And she's going to be fascinating. So stay tuned, and we'll see you next time.